This is Jason Leopold with truthout.org, reporting from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm going to speak with David Iglesias, the former U.S. Attorney for the state of New Mexico, who was fired in December 2006, along with 7 other U.S. attorneys, in what has turned out to be a full-blown scandal engulfing the Justice Department and the White House. Monica Goodling testified on Wednesday. It was a highly anticipated testimony. One of the things that stuck out for me was the fact that she said that she did not hold the keys to the kingdom, taking a quote from you. What was your impression of her testimony? And maybe you can analyze that for us.
Kind of a mixed bag. I mean, on the one hand, she does have a memory. She didn't say, I don't recall, I don't remember 70 times or so, which is what the Attorney General does not have a good memory. On the other hand, she shed a little bit of light. I mean, she did drop the dime on McNulty, the Deputy Attorney General, in terms of he claimed she had not properly briefed him. Well, she said, no, I did properly brief him. So that's pointing fingers toward him. She gave him up right away. And then number 2, I think even more importantly, as regards to the Attorney General, she said Gonzales saw the list, participated in the meetings, and basically knew what was going on. And that's important, because all along he's been saying he delegated that to Sampson, he delegated it to senior leadership, whatever that may mean. And she absolutely pointed the finger at Gonzales, not being asleep at the wheel and knowing what was going on. So those are 2 new things. But in terms of specific reasons why I was put on the list and why my colleagues were put on the list, we didn't get any closer to the goal line, unfortunately.
Well, with that said, who do you think at this point would be responsible for that list?
The only other possible place you can look is the West Wing of the White House. Harriet Miers, Karl Rove, or some of their underlings. Because if the Justice Department didn't have anything to do with placing presidential appointees like me and my colleagues on a list to be terminated, then the only other possible place would be the White House.
Well, in terms of the Justice Department, what would need to happen in order for the Justice Department to restore its credibility, integrity? What would need to happen internally in order to get to that place?
Getting a new Attorney General like James Comey. Somebody who's respected by Congress, somebody who's been a federal prosecutor like Comey.
Now, you filed a complaint with the Office of Special Counsel, which is a small shop that's out of the White House. What's the status of that, and what exactly did your complaint state?
Allege, right. And actually, thanks for asking me about special counsel, because a lot of people think that it's part of the White House. It's not. It's not. Completely independent agency.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Right. It was created by Congress in light of the Watergate scandal. They wanted to create an agency whose sole mission was to investigate federal agency wrongdoing and then file civil enforcement actions. So special counsel also, it's been wrongly reported as part of the Justice Department. It is not part of the Justice Department. Separate agency, about 150 people. I went there last week to be interviewed by some of their attorneys. I'm alleging possible violations of the Uniformed Services Employment Rights and Reemployment Act. It's called USERRA. It's a law that was passed in 1994 to guard, to protect the employment rights of Guard and Reserve members. And then I alleged possible violations of the Hatch Act, which limits and in many cases prohibits political activities by federal employees, including political appointees. So I spent all morning at OSC headquarters. I talked to some attorneys. I've authorized them to investigate. They have subpoena power against federal agencies. And again, their only mandate is federal agencies. They can't file enforcement actions against state and local government or private sector companies.
Do you have faith that they will actually follow through and investigate this issue? I know that it's been reported that Scott J. Block, who heads the Office of Special Counsel, is under investigation himself.
Yes, I'm hopeful that they'll be able to subpoena records more quickly than maybe the House or the Senate. I have no doubts as to Scott Block's sincerity in helping me out. In fact, what your viewers and readers need to know is I did not contact special counsel. They contacted me.
Okay.
So they contacted me back in early March, right before I testified in front of the U.S. Senate. Their deputy is a Marine Corps reservist, and in fact I've done some duty with him. I trust that he wants to do the right thing, that he's not doing this just as a political theater.
Right. What's the status of it at this point, and what what's the next step? What will happen next?
They're gathering information right now. So, in fact, when I get home today, I need to fax them some documents that I have in my possession.
May I ask what are some of the questions they asked?
Sure. Sure. They wanted to know how much military duty I did. They wanted to know whether I was ever contacted by anybody at Main Justice or by the administration to try to discourage me from doing my military duty. They wanted to know whether there was any documentary evidence showing that there was any discouragement. And that was maybe a quarter or so of the interview. Most of it was really focused on Hatch Act. They read me a long list of names that I've later found out to be operatives in the West Wing of the White House. These are political people.
Did you have any contact with these individuals in your past experience as a U.S. attorney?
And that's the point they were getting at. They wanted to know to what extent the West Wing was contacting me to putting direct pressure on me. And it doesn't surprise me that there was no direct pressure. I mean, anyone with half a brain is going to use third parties. They're going to use intermediaries, which in fact happened. Pat Rogers, who's a private sector attorney here, was on my back for 2 years trying to get me to file bogus voter fraud prosecutions. He contacted my executive assistant, who I delegated the voter fraud investigation matter to. He left long, rambling emails on my executive assistant's telephone.
Now, Pat Rogers, what's his role and what is his occupation?
Pat Rogers was a member of the American Citizens for Voter Reform, I think. I think I got that acronym right, ACVR, which has close ties with Karl Rove. And mysteriously, this association disbanded about the time we testified.
Now, is it your belief that these allegations of voter fraud, was it a partisan issue? Did it have to do with the fact that it was Democrats versus Republicans? At least at that point when you were contacted, was that ever impressed upon you, like in terms of?
Never directly. No, and again.
But it sounds like you sort of have a feeling that may have been what was taking place.
Based on what I've read since I've left the office of United States Attorney, based on Karl Rove's obsession with voter fraud issues throughout the country, and based on the fact that New Mexico has been a bellwether state for presidential elections since statehood, and the fact that we've been a battleground state along with Wisconsin and Iowa and a few other states, I have no doubt now that they wanted us to go after what probably would have been Democrat organizations, Democrat-funded organizations.
What is your assessment of the evidence, and what do you think was behind the firings?
Right. We have a lot of circumstantial evidence, which is okay. I mean, prosecutors make cases all the time with circumstantial evidence alone. No direct evidence right now in terms of there being a smoking gun memo or a smoking gun email saying, let's fire Iglesias and Lamb and McKay and the others for these reasons. I believe that exists. I believe that somewhere. You
do believe that there's a smoking gun somewhere?
I do. I believe somewhere on an RNC computer, on some server somewhere, there's an email from Karl Rove stating why we need to be axed. Let me give you 4 good circumstantial bits of information that I think help establish my theory. Carol Lamb notified Main Justice that she was going to be executing a search warrant as to Dusty Fago, who was number 3 at CIA. Within 24 hours of her notifying Main Justice, Kyle Sampson writes an email saying, we have a problem with Carol Lamb. Now, what's he referring to? Is he referring to her immigration cases? I don't think so. The timing there is incredibly suspicious. Number 2, John McKay does not authorize an investigation into the recount of the governor there in Washington State. Within months, he's being interviewed for a federal judgeship, and the first question Harriet Miers, who was then the White House counsel, asked is, why are the Washington Republicans mad at you? Now that's good circumstantial evidence that they were angry with him for not authorizing a bogus investigation of election fraud allegations. Number 3, I'm not on any termination list or fire list until November 7th, 2006. That's the election day. That's within weeks of Pete Domenici, our senator, calling me and not getting the information he wanted, which was, yes, Senator, I will file those public corruption cases immediately because I know that's going to help Congresswoman Heather Wilson. Didn't do that. Case wasn't ready. And he had no business sticking his nose where it didn't belong. Senators don't do prosecutions. Congresswomen don't do prosecutions. They pass laws. You know, that's 5th grade civics stuff. So so he called me in late October. So within 2 weeks, I get placed on the fire list. And then number 4 is actually Paul Charlton, who was investigating Congressman Renzi.
Paul Charlton is the
U.S. Attorney in Arizona, investigating Congressman Rick Renzi from Arizona. Renzi's chief of staff calls Charlton's public affairs officer and says, "Is Renzi being investigated?" Well, they don't comment on that per policy. The press officer contacts Charlton, who then reports it. Guess what? The report, there's no record of the report ever being made of Charlton complaining about this inappropriate call. And then Charlton gets put on the list to be fired. So 4 good real-world examples of circumstantial evidence of U.S. attorneys getting fired for doing the right thing, for not bowing to political pressure.
In terms of where this investigation is headed, do you believe that it will eventually lead to a criminal investigation?
You know, possible obstruction of justice, perjury type of issues, come to mind.
Against who?
Well, perjury would be possibly against McNulty and Gonzales. Although the deal that they may cut is we'll just resign in lieu of facing prosecution.
Watching Monica Goodling's testimony, what were some of the questions that may not have been asked that you would want to know?
And that's a great question. In fact, I talked to my wife Cindy about that just last night. One question that I never heard asked was, why did you resign? Why were you crying? Did you do anything wrong besides possible civil law offenses? I mean, it's no big deal. Well, I don't want to minimize that. It's wrong to break civil service laws, but it's not a crime. It's not a criminal offense. So I would have asked her those 2 questions, and I would have said, are you aware of any other laws being broken, civil or criminal or administrative, by anyone you worked with? I didn't hear that question come out either.
Do you have any interest in returning to your former job as a U.S. attorney?
No, and I made that crystal clear. I do not want to go back as United States Attorney. I don't have confidence in the credibility or leadership of the Justice Department. And I hope to take another month or 2 off until I publicly announce what I'm going to do next.
At this point, it's a wait-and-see approach. Will the White House turn over any emails implicating Karl Rove? Will Karl Rove or Harriet Miers testify before Congress? Will Alberto Gonzales or Paul McNulty be brought up on obstruction of justice or perjury charges? This is Jason Leopold reporting for Truth Out in Albuquerque, New Mexico.